Hello, everybody, and welcome to UK Chancellor Depression Watch. That's right. We are now the official podcast that is tracking the mental health status of Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer of the United Kingdom.
But the thing about women's mental health is that it can strike at any time.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it is reported that Chancellor Rachel Reeves, this is from an article in the Times about how she sucks and they're all turning on her, is she can't see a way out of the bleak economic outlook and is, quote, very depressed, with aides saying she is now watching the 4th season of the U.S. Office in number 11.
Yeah, she's eating cereal out of the big popcorn bowl. It's like, it's really not going well, you know? And I think we can all relate to that, right? You know, whomst among us has not like been in charge of managing like one of the largest economies in the world and been like, this is too much, you know? I think most of all, what we all need at this time is like grace. We need to remember the people who really matter, like Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer. And, you know, I think we all need to do our part to chip in. So I think if we all do that, we can like send a card and like maybe like a box of milk tray or something to number 11 Downing Street. And I think that may be, you know, just to really rally round and let her know that, you know, we've got her back.
Yeah, she's just there like, why can't the British government find buyers for its bonds like Jim found Pam?
Yeah, I think what we should do is use the UK's facility to be able to send any petition to Parliament. We should all send a petition to Parliament.
Just a petition that just says, you okay, hun? XX.
Well, I was going to say, let's send a petition to the UK Parliament that's just the Samaritan's phone number that we want to read to Rachel Reeves when okay, to be fair, if the Tories were serious about being funny in opposition, they could just read her the Samaritan's phone number. That would be very funny.
Listen, if I was elected as a kind of like, you know, Labour right person and my mandate was like growth and growth and growth and growth, and then the bond markets just decided on their own one day, oh no, that's not allowed, I might put a bag lunch in my red box too. But like all the same, it's kind of stretching things a bit to ask me for like my sympathy personally, you know?
Yeah, I'll introduce our guest in just a moment, but I want to conclude this discussion with, you know what? If being the like ultra responsive, straitjacketed to fiscal rules, tied to global bond markets chancellor is a job that you've decided doesn't suit you, you don't have to do it. You can do another one. You fought so hard to be there to make sure that Britain would always be straitjacketed into responding to exactly what financial markets want through these crazy fiscal rules. You fought, you kicked everybody else out. You were part of a faction that sabotaged your own party on multiple occasions to make sure that like the risk that someone else did that job was nil. And now you have it and you fucking hate it because it turns out that just like Liz Truss, it doesn't matter how much you suck off the bond markets. If you don't fix the fucking foundations of the building, it's still going to fall apart. So cheers to Rachel Reeves. Let me conclude by saying you have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. Anyway. That's all the arcane Britain stuff. Let's bring in our guest. It is returning champion. It is Mike Isaac, the New York Times' technology reporter, Silicon Valley guy covering Meta. However, the last time you heard of him on this show, it was the episode about Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, where one segment turned into a two-parter. Mike Isaac, how you doing?
I'm good. I guess I'm better than the last time we spent 2 hours talking about Elon, although I'm sure, I don't know, it'll be our own fun thing with Zuckerberg, I guess.
See how you feel after this. Yeah.
How many British chancellors of the Exchequer are you feeling right now?
Out of a 5, I don't know. Like, I need to go hit Betty's tea room, I think is what I would say, and just load up on scones. That's the last thing I remember.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing about Rachel Reeves, right, is it's so funny to me imagining being a civil servant who is being told to like leak to the newspapers that your boss has depression. Like, I have to imagine if you're like a senior civil servant in the Treasury, there is no shot, 0% chance you do not have worse depression than Rachel Reeves, right? Because you're stuck there. She can retire and go get a directorship somewhere, but you are fucked, and you have to go and like call up a newspaper or WhatsApp a journalist and be like, my boss has been wearing the same sweatpants for 2 weeks.
my boss has been posting some stuff on your close friend's Instagram that I think the Times of London would like to have a look at.
Yeah, she's like blacked out her like profile picture, and she's like, you know, if you know what it is, don't text, you know, like
I can't believe posting like old My Chemical Romance lyrics, but about like bond traders at Barclays.
I mean, the thing is, we know she's depressed. We don't know that it's related to her job in any way. She could have been like, maybe she was like all in on the Adrian Dittman thing, and when she found out that wasn't real, she just kind of like spiraled, you know? Like,
oh my God.
You know, it is Riley, it's November, and it's Mike. Milo may jump in. He's having some internet problems. So we will see. If you hear a Starmer impression later, chances are that's him. But we're going to talk today a lot about
having
Meta.
a reasonable amount of depression, a moderate amount of depression.
Having ticking all the boxes, but only some or few days. Not all of the days in the last 2 weeks.
I mean, there's some synergy here, because I don't know if you saw they interviewed Blair, and he said that you've got to like stop having depression. So, you know, that's for like labor right to labor right communication.
I hate how the government just talks to itself in the press.
Buck up, get it together.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like a house share. It's just like, you know, Tony Blair, in a rare political intervention, called on Rachel Reeves to remember to do the fucking dishes for once.
Yeah. The Downing Street chore wheel is crucial to ensuring that all of the chores get done.
Food in the fridge, label it with your name.
I understand that Rachel Reeves wants her friends Vanden and Stash to be able to crash for the week. Now, Mr. Speaker, Rachel Reeves' friends Vanden and Stash are welcome to stay in number 10 so long, Mr. Speaker, as they get up from the couch by 9, because I have to go to work in the morning.
I would watch that show.
An anarchist number 10. Reminds me of you talked about this on a show I used to do with Dan Beckner, how when he lived in an anarchist squad in Vancouver, some guys from the States came in and tried to dig a latrine, and everyone got like cholera.
Oh my God. Jesus. It's always the Americans that give people cholera.
I want to announce a public health crisis in the UK that at least one house in central London has experienced a Giardia outbreak because someone dug a latrine in the garden. So we're going to be talking a lot about Meta. We're going to be talking also about Peter Thiel and one of the theories we're going to be coming back to, and something we're really going to want to hear from Mike from as well, is about like, this is sort of like the final chess move of the quote unquote anti-elite tech billionaires cycling in as the new, just simply replacing an old elite.
It's interesting, the combination of Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg, you've got a guy who thinks he can speak Greek and a guy who thinks he is Roman. So, you know, it's a real shame that the classicist among us is like, you know, hindered by his internet for this.
The other thing I wanted to say was one more bit of Britain before we get to the tech news. And this is, of course, this has been all over the internet.
Yeah, this is something we would have to acknowledge, you know, and obviously we have a strong take on it.
We've also briefed Mike on this one as well, and it's a phenomenon that happens in the States in addition. And this is, of course, former Labor Defense Secretary and former Labor MP, resigned in like 2004, Ivor Kaplan, who was also leader of the Jewish labor movement in 2018, has recently been confronted after a sting by volunteer pedophile hunters.
You have to imagine, of all the days you could have as a volunteer pedophile hunter, this isn't even like really an endorsement of them, but like they've got to be so pleased with themselves after that one. Like normally you've got to figure that like stock in trade is like, you know, sad man of like little consequence, whereas this appears to be like sad man of like some political consequence crashing out this way.
Now, this is, I think, probably the most important reading I can do on the subject here, so I'll say this. Sections 1 and 2 of the Contempt of Court Act 1981 contain a rule that a publication
Yeah. That's pretty much it. You know, like my definitive take on this is, damn, that's allegedly crazy. I think it's legal to say that whatever he may or may not have done, this is a guy who has had an interesting few months, and I hope that the authorities get to the bottom of it one way or the other in a way that is, you know, correct. Yeah.
As a British publication, and to any Americans on the British publication, I have to add that everyone here is bound by British contempt of court law. I think what we can say is, I hope justice is done in whatever direction, and also, given what we know about volunteer pedo hunters who stream their stings on Facebook, as November said, what a fucking red letter day for them.
to these guys, that they must have figured they caught the guy who invented Globo Homo, right? Like they found the first gay guy as far as they're concerned. So they're having a great time, and you know, as you say, the sections 1 and 2 for the contempt of court.
But this is also something that happens quite a bit in the States, right? Like you see live streams of guys who are like, we're volunteer pedo hunters, and you know, we're out to do some entrapment.
Not to like just take over Milo's bits, but this is something that like Russia was ahead of the curve on. They were innovating on that. They were like hate criming people who weren't even doing anything on live streams from that pretty quickly. And you know,
not that we want to imply that Ivor Kaplan did anything, crucially.
That's true. Okay, so allegedly, but yeah, it's just like ultimately, I think we're heading towards a culture where this is just like completely normalized. Is that good or bad? Who can say? But you know, did this guy do anything good or bad? Who can say? Not us legally.
He certainly did some posts.
He certainly had an interesting Twitter account that I think maybe was ill-advised in some ways.
Yes, but was followed by everybody in the Labour Party.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a little bit awkward as well to be like your colleague is at a minimum that you know about visibly kind of like having a weird one by retweeting a lot of porn like from his like real name politics account.
Maybe that's what gave Rachel Reeves depression. You know, she's been following it for so long.
Well, she got like one-shotted by like seeing this guy retweeting like fucking massive twink cocks and was like, okay, I'm gonna like take 2 weeks off to really not think about this.
Yeah,
she just hates cringe posting.
Oh, there we go.
Wait, that's Trash Features Milo Edwards.
Yeah, hi, I'm back. Yeah. Sorry, I was busily retweeting massive twink cocks, and then I remembered that I was supposed to be on this podcast.
See, it's less weird if you're a podcaster, I feel, but if you were like veterans minister and like all your other retweets are like Starmer stuff, that's weird company. Starmer hasn't been in company with like twinks for, you have to imagine, a while.
How dare you as veterans minister retweet massive twink cocks? You expect members of the armed forces to see naked men's penises? Come on.
Well, like relatedly to this, in the alleged video that may or may not have been taken by these alleged volunteer pedo hunters, they like call him on this specifically of having been veterans minister because I guess it's worse to be like associated with the military and be a nonce than to just be a nonce, allegedly. Which I just thought was really funny to be like, not only is this guy allegedly doing like reprehensible sex crimes, but he's also tarnishing the reputation of the British Armed Forces.
I wanted them because I know that like volunteer pedo hunters streaming shit on Facebook is a transatlantic phenomenon. I do want to bring Mike in here before we talk about DOGE and Meta and stuff. Has an American group of amateur hunters, to your knowledge, ever confronted a fish of this size?
No. This is like the big mouth Billy Bass of pedo hunting lands, I think. American guys just beat up random dudes or, random dudes that they find. And not to my knowledge, has there been an actual famous person, celebrity, American celebrity or, politician imitation that I've seen, but it's usually like the real sick version of bum fights, basically, but finding, potential pedophiles over here.
It's all content. Like, this is the new content economy, I guess.
Yes, it's disturbing to me, honestly. Like the whole sort of thing.
It's actually Teaboo stuff in America. They're imitating our culture, but they don't really understand how it works. They're just beating up a guy in Cleveland, going, "He could have been a Nazi."
What I was saying when you were off was that they're imitating Russian culture ultimately.
Which is just slapping a guy, having a big. The original happy slap was Russian, and there was nothing happy about it.
The depression slap.
Yeah, the perestroika slap.
Look, the glasnost slap was actually a lot more fun. So look, I want to move on. I want to move on to, of course, another piece of news. This is more sort of U.S. oriented news. It has been revealed a little more the structure of the Department for Government Efficiency, as called. It's been revealed how it's going to work. Apparently, the first thing it's done is it has put Vivek Ramaswamy on the moon and taken away his phone, because that motherfucker,
like in the Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, that motherfucker has been gone. He has been disappeared. He has been colored. He's been altered out of photos like the 1952 in the Soviet Union. He is vanished. He posted about Urkel, and now he was never heard from again.
You know what this means? We are, as a guy who was like fired for posting too hard, I am obliged to respect him a bit, especially because the post that ended his career was like talking shit about white people. That's I think we sort of have to like tentatively hand it to him.
It's cropped out like an ex-boyfriend on Instagram.
Yeah. Getting iced out by the right for my tweets about white people drive like this.
But the structure of the organization has been announced. Mike, have you seen the sort of reporting on the structure of DOGE?
I think that it's still sort of considered like a give a ball to these kids in the corner so they can play with it over here, at least for a lot of folks in the US, like just like Trump admin folks that are getting kind of tired of a lot of these people. I know they're like posturing like this is a real thing. This is really, we can actually send these people in. The billionaires can like take their important time off and have civil service. But like, fill me in on the actual structure. But like, the only thing I keep reading is like, it's distract them with a ball in the corner sort of thing.
The Department of Jangling Keys. I mean, the thing that always fascinates me about this, right, is if you actually like take them at their word, if you have this idea of like, a Doge guy in a windbreaker who runs like 15 Groiper Twitter accounts is going to come into your office and tell you how to run your agency or whatever, all well and good for the like soy bits of the federal government. You can do that to the Department of Education, but like, what do you do to the like psycho half of the federal government? Like, I want to meet the Doge guy they send to the CIA. They're gonna tell like Alan Dulles the 24th that he needs to like cut out the woke shit.
Yeah, I personally, I would love to see them go to like the DEA and just like looking at a bunch of photocopied receipts while an increasingly nervous, tweaking DEA agent rubs his nose nervously and like fingers his gun.
No, just doing a ride along with your Doge guy like training day.
Just $200 bill for like Starbucks and for my breakfast.
We made the Doge guy smoke cracks. I know what it's like.
All right, everybody at the DEA. This is Bill. He's the founder of Glunch. It's a business-to-business invoice automation AI provider, and he's going to be looking through all of your expense accounts.
Yeah.
Hey, do we need to have this many cartel guys on the payroll? And then he's already hanging by his ankles from like a Tijuana overpass.
Right. And like, there's the other thing that I mentioned this for is that there are surprising little pockets of this kind of like scary federal agency throughout, like, and what they're gonna do when you try and go to, say, I don't know, Health and Human Services, right? And you go, all right, we gotta delete all of the stuff about like anti-racism, and then you also have to talk to the Health and Human Services SWAT team that exists for some reason and has like $1 billion budget that they spend entirely on like flashbanging different hospital wards. That's gonna be entertaining to me.
Yeah, I can't believe the CEO of Pootapoot has been blinded and deafened permanently by.
That's not even the guy they're gonna send.
Absolute disaster when we flashbang the heart attack ward.
They are gonna send like a 19-year-old ectomorph called Tyler in to do this shit, you know? And he's gonna have a little scraggly fucking beard, and he's gonna like try and get like whatever 4-star general Mark Milley handpicked as his successor to be like, say that there are only 2 genders.
But this is what it said, right? Is that DOGE will not exist. It will not be an organization. It will be
it's a way of life. It's
yeah. Well, it will exist as, and I say,
it's a vibe.
Get this, a group chat.
Oh God, I have a gun in my mouth.
way.
Yeah, it will
That's
exist.
it. We're gonna put Gibbo in charge of
Yeah,
DOGE.
I mean that'd be better.
Gibbosh.
Yeah, there we go.
It is unlikely to incorporate as anything. Its office is just going to be in the SpaceX Washington office. And quote, it is more likely to exist as a brand for an interlinked group of aspirational leaders who are on a joint group chat and share a loyalty to Mr. Musk or Ramaswamy. Sorry, I'm seeing Ramaswamy being deleted.
Fully like explicitly like oligarchical influence network. You know, like you used to, back in the day when you had a kind of thing like this, you used to have to run it through like a recently privatized state gas company or something.
Yeah.
Oligarchy's gone to the dogs. Back in the day, you had to marry Boris Yeltsin's daughter and use your newfound influence to convince the Bank of Moscow to loan you a huge amount of money to buy Surgut Nefty gas. Now, anyone just walking off the street, you're saying you got a group chat, you want to run the American empire. Sorry, mate, you got to put in the hard yards.
doing like last hard class shit, but for like oligarchy, you know?
Yeah. Remember when the oligarchs were hard? Now they've gone soft now. I tell you what, none of these guys could murder anyone in a sauna with a crossbow.
Trevor Traina, a billionaire,
A great name.
who considered joining DOGE but didn't because it doesn't pay.
Hey, respect to that guy.
Yeah, that's how you get to be a billionaire. Is you never work for free.
Value your labor.
To be fair, I suppose it's number one, like we know who actually is taking these jobs. It's all people who've gotten Thiel fellowships, who worked at Palantir and Ariel, and they're doing it like they're working those jobs exactly like employees of fucking SNC Lavalin made quote unquote campaign contributions to like Muammar Gaddafi's re-election, right? Like we know what this actually is. You know, it's like, okay, well, it's these handpicked oligarchs just putting their guys into a bunch of government departments who are going to, try and shape the future of them. And I guess the question is, are enough of them going to risk taking the DEA assignment to see through that agenda? And I think the funny thing is, by the way, Trevor Traina, this entrepreneur, he says, Pete, the cynics among us will say, oh, it's just naive billionaires stepping into the fray of government. But it's a service to the nation that we saw more typically around the founding of the nation. The friends I know have huge lives, and they're agreeing to work for free for 6 months, leave their families, and roll up their sleeves. Oh, yeah, tech guys being like, oh, sorry, I, a member of the Thiel Fellowship, who is, by the way, committed pronatalist. I have a wife, and we're going to have 9 children together. I and all the other guys from the Thiel Fellowship are going to go live in a house for 6 months, alone, with no wife. So, goodbye.
Yeah, no wives allowed.
Yeah, well, an attempt to really turn things around. You can view it either way. The funny thing about Trevor Traina, of course, is that under Trump, he was ambassador to Austria who flew a pride flag at the Vienna embassy and is now considered to be soy by the rest of those guys.
All the fact that they all hate each other
Amazing.
For like a sort of like fractal number of reasons is that's one of the few things keeping me going. Like people like to talk about the left and like splitting and shit like that, but we don't have a monopoly on these kind of like micro beefs, and at least ours tend to be somewhat discourse focused. All of these guys are just like interpersonally hate each other anyway.
Anyway, I want to move on. Let's talk Meta. Let's begin plumbing some of the depths. Now, this is the second episode on Meta in a very small amount of time. This is, of course, because they've announced a lot of changes, and half the changes got announced literally as we were finishing our previous episode. So there's a lot more to talk about. Now, Mike, you mostly do cover Meta. Like, that's one of your main focuses for the New York Times.
Yeah.
I'm calling this total Greg Steube victory, but how would you characterize what has happened at Meta and its group of companies more on the politics, company, and content side rather than like the AI first side in the last 4 or 5 months?
Yeah. So the AI thing is a whole other sort of, business implications for them. But like it's really striking as, I don't know, I see it as a few things: a capitulation, this idea that, this stuff that we have been holding back in a way of like not sort of explicitly catering to the government in their language is now just like a complete turnaround. We're gonna, do this announcement where we're rolling back a number of the content moderation things and sort of speech policy on the platform that we had in stone for basically 8 years. And a lot of folks are sort of saying, and I think this is partially true, this is a cynical ploy to sort of appeal to the Trump administration, which I think is right. But I want to be clear, it's like not Zuckerberg holding his nose while he does it and saying, I have to, this is not stuff I believe in. I do think, at least for now, the guy has believed a number of these, like the internet age is too woke, or at least we're being forced into wokeness by the government, by progressives in Silicon Valley, by progressives online. We need to sort of roll this stuff back. But, with the other caveat that the guy also has pretty malleable views over time and tends to kind of meet the moment based on what is existential to his business, so 4 to 8 years from now, maybe we see an entire reversal again. But I do think that like this is not like liberal Zuckerberg deciding to become Trumpist just because Trump is moving into power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like liberal Zuckerberg was a kind of outgrowth of a bet by him that Trump was an aberration in 2016, and you could see it actually when you could see when the switch happened. It wasn't when Trump won; it was actually around 2022 when the Ukraine war happened in the aftermath of COVID. Just like a lot of the other tech billionaires, he seemed to sense, okay, the thing that animated MAGA is not going to, and similar movements in other countries, is not going to be going away. It's not going to be beaten by a kind of reheated early 2000s pre-financial crisis liberalism that sort of is responding to like, I think the other thing that can't be overstated as well is that at that moment, that kind of liberalism had a moment of trying to resuscitate itself by responding to the Black Lives Matter sort of protests around the States. That also happened in the UK. Like Keir Starmer, fucking kneeled with a kente cloth, as did Nancy Pelosi. Yep. And I think it was at that moment, combined with like, the end of COVID and the Ukraine war, that a lot of the tech billionaires went, okay, this far and no further. We're all like anti-DEI now. We're slowly going to start rolling back those policies. That's when companies started deleting DEI policies. Coinbase was just the first one.
Yes. And that's the sort of, I think you're totally right. And like, I was thinking about this, folks online, including myself, were like, oh, they only think Trumpism is going to last 4 years, or like what happens when the Democrats come back in power. But I think you're right. Like, I think the Democrats even now are backing away from that, exactly the kneeling era, the sort of like posturing. We need to wrap everything in what we think is the good signaling, the corporate sort of pink washing of different initiatives. This is a bet on that being done now, basically. And like maybe they're right. Maybe if Democrats do come back, you're even seeing Dems over here sort of really backing away from this sort of what they are calling now wokeist sort of PC speech. But like, I don't know. For me, it's just like it colors everything. Not that we shouldn't have already been cynical about all of the things that they've been putting out there and all the initiatives that they've had for a long time, but it colors all of the past 8 years of Zuckerberg's sort of company company-wide, billions of dollars spent on this stuff in an even more cynical light, I would say.
Well, it's marketing. It's in so many cases. This is anytime I would see conservatives getting incensed about DEI, I'd be like, what you're doing is you are getting angry at a marketing campaign. And then, but just to remember that in, again, what I always remember, Beat Takeshi referring to America as a, quote, entertainment nation, and that extending to the rest of the Anglosphere is like getting people to get mad at a marketing campaign is a great way to energize them because that's what they understand the world to be comprised of.
Oh, Jesus.
That's
pretty good.
Yeah.
It worked great with Bud Light, you know.
Yeah.
Why not do it with everything else?
But I describe this as total Steube victory because, as listeners to the show will know, we have a favorite U.S. congressman, as every podcast in the world does.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And our favorite U.S. congressman is, of course, Sarasota Republican Greg Steube, a man who once asked Sundar Pichai why his emails were going to junk mail for in his friends and family.
That fucking rocks. That is exactly
Okay.
what you do when you're in power. You use the CEO of a company as tech support in a congressional hearing.
Yeah. He then, a couple of months later, he then fell off of his roof while repairing it, but was apparently fine. A gigantic meathead.
He's too big, ground injured, Steube fine.
He is our perfect oaf. Right.
Yes.
And, you know,
And
without the kind of like, you know, burden of DEI and wokeness holding them back, thanks to DOGE, any kind of like, you know, the federal, like, you know, Fish and Wildlife Service will finally be able to pursue him.
He's a guy who should have been saved from politics and who should have spent his life running from the HHS SWAT team. Unfortunately, he's in power.
Yeah. Well, he's a prisoner of destiny, like so many Greek tragic figures, you know. The American Empire was faced with the question, Steube or not Steube. And, you know, like a philosopher king, he has been summoned. You know, he didn't want to rule, but he must.
He turned down Imperium 3 times. But Greg Steube has long had a lot of complaints about Facebook. He's kind of, when I want to think about what the U.S. right wants regarding tech regulation, your sort of average right-winger, I always look at Greg Steube as my bellwether.
He is the most Facebook-pilled of them.
Yes. And he is like one of the dumbest examples of a Facebook user there is. One of like your just replacement level rather, sort of Trump supporters. You know, what has happened is Mark Zuckerberg has closed his eyes really, really hard and pressed on both of his temples for a long enough time until he became Greg Steube. He turned himself into Steube. So Steube's most recent venture forth on Meta was only a few months ago, where he said again, Meta is notorious for censoring conservative speech. Only after Zuckerberg got caught engaging in election interference by censoring the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story in October 2020 did he promise to reform Meta for content moderation purposes. Steube said, before then going on to suggest that his appointment of John Arnold, a former Enron trader and charter school advocate who happens to have hopped on the disinformation train by a global witness to Meta's board. Steube was like, yeah, that shows they haven't changed at all. So Mark Zuckerberg has just said, okay, Greg Steube, if you're not going to believe us, I will turn myself into you.
Yeah. That's why he's at the gym all the time. He's trying to get big enough to be Greg Steube.
Now, so of course, then we're going to talk a little more about specifically what's changed. But Zuck outlined a lot of this on what can now really be understood as like regime radio Joe Rogan, essentially.
Yes.
You know, so what did he say on Rogan? I have a few examples here, but I want to know what jumped out at you, Mike.
Yeah, the Rogan interview really blew me away, and this is my fucking job, and I'm only 2.5 hours through it, basically. So I need to get back into it, I guess.
It's not fair what they're making you do.
I was just about to say my job is now listening to Rogan every so often, and it's really intense.
Lord Raw.
Right. But it blew me away because I do know, just, you know, I've been reporting on him for a long time and have talked to folks kind of in his circle. I've known that he's held some of these views around, you know, we are holding basically, I think if they had their way, they would not have to deal with any sort of moderation, which is not possible because there are laws, especially in the EU and I believe in Britain, that where you have to sort of take certain things down or face massive fines. But if they had their way, they would have no sort of moderation at all. So a bunch of what they once called their hate speech policy, they now call hateful conduct, particularly because they wanted to get it away from this idea that speech can be damaging, I guess is what some of the policy thinking was. They rolled back a lot of things you wouldn't wouldn't be allowed to say on there. So one policy example from a source we talked to said that, you wouldn't be allowed to post white people have mental illness because that is targeting a group, a white group, I guess is what it was. But you would be allowed to post gay people have mental illness, and a lot of things that were kind of centered on trans, non-binary.
I didn't know Rachel Reeves was gay.
Yeah.
Right. And it can happen to anyone.
Right. And then we watched The Office. So what I think the lesser issue was sort of taking out fact checking, at least in the United States. They still are required to in the EU, I believe, which I think is a lesser deal because, fact checking the billions of things that go through Facebook every day is an impossible task. And honestly, always was sort of a fig leaf in my imagination to get the government off their back. And then lastly, reversing their stance of the past 12 to 18 months saying no one wants to see politics in their feeds. We just want to see, dog pics and whatever. And they're shoving it back into Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and...
Oh, no, not Threads.
I know, we're all fucked. So just a bunch of reversals.
There's a lot. I think there's a few ways to look at this, right? One is the old adage that every platform eventually becomes the same platform over time. Used to be that every platform was becoming TikTok, but now it seems like the proximity of X specifically to Trump, X the everything app, of course, specifically to Trump and American power has meant that other platform companies have an incentive for every platform to become Twitter or X the everything app.
Yeah.
Which is
seeing the grok-ification of American society.
The DOGE guys said we have to replace the language model that targets the howitzers with grok.
Yeah, that's right.
The future of warfare is two anti-woke AIs fighting each other.
Yeah. Norman Grockefeller, is that anything?
Norman fucking Grockwell.
Right, but there's that one observation, right? Platforms become one another. Then I think there's another one, which is that what we're seeing, we've seen capital in the U.S., specifically large sort of nationally important quote unquote corporates, and the U.S. state being largely coterminous with one another is not at all new, obviously. But what we're seeing is platform capital and the U.S. state becoming largely coterminous with one another. I think because of how important posting is to movement conservatives and the president in particular.
That's pretty good.
And also because of the fact that now, there is an official platform enemy in the form of TikTok, which may get banned. So it's that if you're Zuckerberg, you have a really strong incentive to align yourself as much as you can to the president, to be like, oh, Mr. President, I know you said you were going to turn me into a court jester 18 months ago, but we know that was all fun, right? We're friends now. Please ban TikTok.
I mean,
please ban TikTok.
As grim as it's looking, you really have to look to Trump as the real destabilizing element, the wild card here. Trump and Elon Musk, the two really uncontrollable weirdos here. Because otherwise, it's really seeming like these guys have a lot of this shit sewn up,
I do think you're exactly right. And this Mark has also taken this outwardly America first tack to kind of secure that, right? He's saying, we must eliminate the Chinese menace that is TikTok, which he may actually get his way very soon. It's looking like the Supreme Court here is going to ban it. After, by the way, not that long ago, regularly courting Xi Jinping and asking the president what he should name the birth of his first child when he was over in China visiting him. So
incredible.
It's not
Mark Zuckerberg is just a lifetime bitch.
That's a pretty good. Yeah, right. But that's the thing. It's people have kind of a short memory around this stuff, and that's what I think Zuckerberg is counting on when he's waving the American flag on a hydrofoil, drinking a Bud Light, or no, I'm sorry, the non-gay beer, right? So it would have been Miller Lite. But that's the sort of the thing is he kind of figures out, especially around his close advisors, Joel Kaplan, Bush era sort of guy who's basically architecting all these changes. because they know what the strategy is and it's all in on the USA. And I agree. Like, what does Trump do tomorrow? What does Elon do tomorrow? God knows. Who knows what they're going to do? But I think that's what Zuckerberg is counting on, basically.
I just really hope that, listen, I don't know very much about Xi Jinping personally, but I hope that he is a uniquely petty and vindictive man who is deeply wounded by Mark Zuckerberg's perceived betrayal of him.
Yeah. I think it would be fun if like so many Americans are so hopelessly addicted to TikTok that becomes the resistance, you know. You've got like middle-aged moms in secret in a basement somewhere in Wisconsin making tea in a microwave and filming it and being like, this is how we show that we're not part of it.
Yeah, forget about lib January 6th. It's the TikTok January 6th.
Well, like,
That's
you know
right,
how every time like more than two Chinese people are on like the same VPN site at the same time, and they get a kind of breathless write-up that's like, is this the end of the Chinese Communist Party? I look forward to like a couple of Americans posting TikToks and kind of like breathless international coverage of the end of the American regime.
The South China Morning Post in between loudest sneeze ever recorded by Panda and this boat sail all the way to Antarctica is the end of the American regime.
Sort of a People's Daily vibe, but yeah.
Sorry, People's Daily, not South China Morning Post. Fuck.
More and more Americans have been tuning in to watch the videos of the family as they dance to Forget-Me-Nots in their local pub, showing discontent with the regime.
I honestly, it can't come soon enough. I want to be reading English language People's Daily content that's like a peasant from rural Montana province still makes barbecue the old-fashioned way, or whatever.
Yeah, Cincinnati Zoo gorilla has 46th birthday.
Oh shit, he turned 46. God.
Oh, cool. Everyone in China loves American Pangzai.
I believe there may be a case for genuine like proletarian exchange there, you know? Like America has a lot of working class alcoholics and I salute them, you know?
Yeah.
American Pangzai, also known as a regular guy.
Mysterious disease emerges at cattle market in Wyoming prefecture.
But back to Meta, right? So this is when I sort of look at like, okay, well, this is the union of capital, a political movement, and the organs of government for an era where entertainment appears to be everything. But at the same time, you wonder like, what is explicitly aligning itself with the American state going to do for Meta in its very important global markets?
As the American state becomes kind of like more unhinged.
Well, yes, indeed. I genuinely don't know, right? Because it's not as though Meta...
What's the EU going to do to Meta if like sort of Zuck is palling around with Trump and then Trump invades Greenland, you know?
Yeah, well, genuinely.
Yeah, he is even in that Rogan interview too. He railed against, I think he even said, you know, the European Commission as well. But like, he's just saying all these other governments are encroaching on us. The Biden administration gave them liberty to do that because we capitulated to them during COVID by taking down certain things, which again, he's very pissed off or resentful at having to take down stuff during COVID lockdowns here. I keep asking myself what the long grand plan is that, you know, just fully aligning yourself with Trumpism is going to work on. But maybe it's not even more, looking beyond the idea that they have to fend off Trump threatening to jail Mark Zuckerberg or antitrust and FTC investigations in here looking to break them up. I'm not sure.
Getting hauled into the European Commission and giving the enhanced interrogation treatment. Like, you forget yourself, Mr. Zuckerberg. I did not get these frameless glasses with a lack of perceptiveness.
You never want to hand it to European libs, like they're evil people, but like it's the same thing I always say, you know. I hate it when the government defends itself from the left, but I love it when the government defends itself from the right. And if they can make Zuck and, you know, Trump even bend the knee on this, then so much the better.
You either speak to me now or Ursula von der Leyen in that room over there. It's up to you, Mr. Zuckerberg.
It's the scene from Sicario, but instead of the bottle, instead of like the big water cooler bottle of water, water, Benicio del Toro just grabs a gigantic Perrier. The other thing I want to mention, Mike, I will take this back up. So you mentioned is out on an antitrust, right? Which is that at the same interview, Zuck also was like, oh yeah, Lena Khan said we had to be woke. So if you're not woke, you should oppose Lena Khan trying to break us up.
All of these guys have the stupidest possible grievances.
That's why I say the only way to understand Mark Zuckerberg, I think, and what he will do is to ask what Greg Steube would do if he was put in that position.
I have a question, right? Because as we've established, as we've established, Mark Zuckerberg is a man for all seasons, right? He has a very, very mutable nature, right? So the question I'd like to pose to you is, who is your favorite Mark Zuckerberg? And I'll tell you my answer. My favorite Mark Zuckerberg is the Mark Zuckerberg who decided he was going to run for president, spent like 2 weeks going around like diners in Iowa, and then decided that this was a terrible idea and stopped, but the photos are still up. That's my favorite Mark Zuckerberg.
My favorite was when they were launching Facebook Live, and it was the grilling meats. Mark Zuckerberg. We're grilling some meats here. Yeah. That was a good one.
I just watched that video again. That was a trip. I forgot about that. There's so many meat. It was fucking excruciating.
Yeah. Grilling meats.
I guess the way I've taken all of this, right, is that there is a number of tampons in a safe at Meta headquarters. And those tampons...
Wait, is this a management consultancy interview question?
Sell me this tampon.
What day is it?
I don't need to. You're already holding
it. Every time there is a political change, those tampons will be redistributed through the men's bathrooms at Meta properties. It seems to be.
I like to hope so. It's pretty scary, and you don't want to like think too hard that this is going to be a kind of a Weimar type situation, because the last time that you had this kind of like corporatist unison behind the kind of like very far right government and a sort of like superpower, it was not a good time, right? And I think I kind of want to caution against this assumption that like, first of all, that all these people are like secretly in their deepest heart libs, right, who are just trying to wait this stuff out, but also that this stuff can be waited out in that way. I think that we may have to deal very seriously with the possibility that this can only be solved by turning the whole country over to the people's daily, whatever course that takes.
If we want to look at like how under Trump's thumb Zuck is and how happy he is about it, right? It says in August, Zuckerberg sent a letter to Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, who was also on the same panel as Steube, asking fucking tech support questions to like Sundar Pichai, saying that President Biden's White House was wrong to pressure Facebook to censor content in 2021 related to COVID-19, and that Meta wouldn't comply with such efforts in the future. So essentially, if anything happens...
So essentially, you are going to die of like bird flu because of Greg Steube.
Yeah,
just to be absolutely clear, Greg Steube is going to like kill you in the next pandemic because he didn't know how to send an email.
Yeah. Oh, I've got the avian flu bee.
Honestly, I think they've come a long way, Trump said about Meta and its policy changes. Asked whether he thought Zuckerberg was responding to his own threats, Trump said, yeah, probably.
God, that rocks.
The like Trump personal analysis of vibes. He's not wrong here. Like,
look, he agrees with me now, but he's still a pussy, and that's probably why he's agreeing with me.
He literally
he doesn't want me to have to come down there. Yeah,
and it's like this is one of the like few bright spots of Trumpism, is that you get one guy who's allowed to tell the truth, and it is this kind of prissy former real estate developer from Queens who just also happens to be Turbo Hitler.
I think it's weird that the king has jester's privilege, but that's fine.
My kind of sole remaining hope, aside from the Chengdu J-20 Joint Strike Fighter, right, is this idea that like shit's so weird and stupid all the time that something weirder and stupider will happen. Like if we're in the kind of like farce of first is tragedy, then is farce, there's gonna be some more farce along pretty quickly.
Like,
you have
people
to
are gonna
assume.
get hit with sandbags dropping from the rafters. Lights are gonna blow. Like someone's gonna flub their lines. It's all the play that goes wrong. This is from another Wall Street Journal article.
The government that goes wrong.
Yeah, this is from another Wall Street Journal article about Meta. Before we go in, of course, to we couldn't ignore it, the Thiel op-ed. Zuckerberg had been personally upset by Meta's system. In November 2023, he posted a picture of himself after knee surgery, which he tore during MMA fighting. Quote, "Still looking forward to it after I recover. Thanks to everyone for the love and support." The post did not receive much attention on Facebook.
Oh, that's a radicalizing experience. I mean, maybe why is it all legs with this fucking guy?
He just can't get legs to work.
Just well, he put. I mean, this is obviously like there's a multi-phase plan, right? Phase 1, put legs in the metaverse. Phase 2, start goose stepping.
You think that you're having trouble with your legs now, but if you cross the European Commission again.
November, would you say it's fair that legs are clearly Mark Zuckerberg's Achilles heel? Would you say that's fair? There we go.
Yeah,
so the post initially received anemic attention on Facebook that slowed the spread of viral health-related content. Obviously, right? Of course they would do that because people were using it to be like, what if we coughed on each other and got the COVID out that way? Like, that's what Facebook was being used for. That and shrimp Jesus.
People refused to answer that question, to be fair.
Established after Meta staff determined such material was frequently false or sensationalistic, but the rule had also ensnared Zuckerberg's innocuous post, prompting him to personally demand a review of the rule and other overreach and safety measures.
God.
He was silenced for truth. He was deboosted. He became one of those like Congress people who's like, why am I getting deboosted? Why are my emails going to spam? Why can't I, update the clock on my microwave?
He was sitting in his bathroom, sitting in front of the mirror, having a two-way conversation with himself as Greg Steube. That's it. Why am I being deboosted, Mr. Zuckerberg, at long last?
Billionaire mindset is like inscrutable to me for a couple of reasons, not least the fact that this really underscores that none of them are tech guys. Like we've sort of known that about Elon for a long time, but Musk kind of that's sort of different. Zuck had this kind of like nerdy affect to him, and it now is increasingly clear that he does not know shit about his own product, and he's just like a kind of culture war guy. But imagine getting mad about this. Imagine getting mad about anything. You have enough money that you could buy enough heroin to never feel anything for the rest of your life, and enough doctors to keep that life going for another 80 years if you wanted. You could you could turn into the fucking you could be hedonism bot. You could be the emperor of mankind. Every single day of your life, you could experience new delights, the likes of which we can't even think of. You could be eating civet or something, and instead you're getting mad about posts. Why are you getting mad about posts? You could literally be like, hey, today I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna burn a piece of the most expensive rare hardwood in the world, and I'm gonna do that with a different species every day, and I'm never gonna run out of them, and I'm never gonna run out of money. Literally, you have a kind of boy king level of resources and no whimsy, because you're just a aging divorced freak show, and it's just really the limitations of being governed by these people is a fucking insult. At least when we had kings and emperors and shit, you would have a 9-year-old Kaiser who died choking trying to eat plums made out of solid gold. But instead, this guy is just trying to kick people's legs off and get mad that he isn't getting enough likes.
Well, this goes to show for me that the arc of oligarchy is long, but it does tend towards Russian oligarchy. American oligarchs have more money, but Russian oligarchs are the apex predators because they understand truly what it is to be fully actualized as an oligarch. Because like you say, Musk, Zuck, whoever, they can afford all this stuff. They can live a more luxurious life, but deep down what they really in their soul's desire is to run Arkhangelsk, right? They want to be the feudal lord of a town where they have armed men setting burning tire barricades. They want to live in a gold old house, right? They want to be murdering their enemies in saunas with crossbows. Like, that is what they want. That is their truest feeling. They want to force all of the journalists in the town to come to a press conference they have called where they announce that the Greeks are Uzbeks and bore them with a 400 slide PowerPoint presentation about why this is true, which is all from stuff from like, truthjuice.kz. And they have to listen and go, yes, very good point. I will put this in paper. Like, and they could have every luxury, but they don't want that. What they want is to run surgut.
You're so right. Like, and this is the thing. Like, if you look at someone like, I don't know, Alexander Dugin or like Edward Limonov even, right? Like, you had these Russian like intellectuals who were sort of like able to sell the guy who runs surgut on the idea of like, Uzbeks being Greeks or whatever the fuck. And so too, you have guys who are willing to like sell Musk or Zuckerberg on this idea of like the cathedral or whatever the fuck. And it's just like, you have too much money to be thinking about this stuff. Like, obviously what you think is like wrong and stupid and offensive and like, take the transphobia as an example, right? There is no earthly reason for you to think about trans people ever in your life, because you should be thinking about new kinds of like research chemicals you could be doing.
Unless we're about to unlock Chaser Zuck arc.
You could literally be trying to like crash a new one-of-one luxury car every day. And instead you're thinking about like tampons.
A lot of people in Arkhangelsk are doing research chemicals involuntarily.
The other thing I'll mention as well, right? And I think this is something that Mike will know about too, which is so many of these rules that they are now changing and railing against, they never put in because of a set of beliefs or even because of what they thought would be popular or what they thought would be right. It was because this is what they thought advertisers would respond to. That's all.
This is actually a funny thing now is like all the advertisers are there's always been this like quote unquote brand safety thing, right? You don't want to put an ad for Pepsi next to like, I don't know, white supremacist rhetoric on Facebook or something. So like you're exactly right. Like, okay, we're going to put all this stuff in there. This is going to placate our advertisers who, by the way, are going through their own moment of putting Kylie Jenner on the front lines of like riot shields or whatever the fuck that was. Like that was like a very specific cultural moment here. The funny, quote unquote, funny thing now is that Facebook is so dominant in this specific type of advertising called direct response advertising, which is basically like app install ads or performance marketing, things where you can eventually like that you can measure directly, like say like a Google ad. They are so dominant there that even if my Pepsi ad appears next to some really noxious shit, I don't have a choice to pull those ads anymore. I don't have the ability to do that sort of boycott that you might on a Twitter, which is reliant on brand advertising, which is basically like those billboards of awareness rather than like clicking on a thing. So in a sense, they're hostage in a way to the Facebooks and Googles of the world that they don't really have a choice on, which is funny, quote unquote, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? There's, irrespective of the actual merits of any kind of a liberal vision, right? There are also people who were there to sell that to them. Like, this is the only extent to which the cathedral could be said to be a real thing, like DEI could be said to be a real thing, is that this was a service that you could sell Facebook to be like, yeah, we are going to like make your sort of corporate culture conform with a kind of inclusive, like liberal notion, right? And it's just that's out of favor now. And it only really had like a kind of indirect relationship to things people, like actual real people were doing, because it was all still kind of pandering. So yeah, ultimately, like if you're in that position, there's always going to be that lens, and I think it's gonna be weirdly distortive of what the right want from them too.
Yep. And that's, the funny thing too is that like I'm already seeing right-wing folks who are responding saying like, this is bullshit, this is disingenuous, Mark is doing another heel turn. The Brian Armstrongs of the world, who's the guy who leads Coinbase, those were the guys who were standing up for what was unpopular at the time, and now Mark is just doing this.
We can't trust a guy with that much hair, like it should really like alarmingly bald guys only, please. Like,
hey, as a bald guy, I identify identify with that, but I do know what you're talking about. But like, it would be fascinating if all this prostration doesn't even work in the end, or at least work with the people that he really wants to. And back to Milo's point, wants to like him, online and off. So I don't know. It's still like a TBD on whether this will work in that regard, even beyond the Trumpism, sort of like hoping the government doesn't kill them point of view.
I don't think it's going to work in the sense of making people like them, just because they're not likable people, and that's not something that they're ever going to come to terms with. It's driving them crazy. Yep. Jeff Bezos went to fucking space, and he's still mad you don't like him. Like, you personally, listener, do not like Jeff Bezos, and that like keeps him up at night.
I'd actually argue that Jeff Bezos is the only one that doesn't keep up at night. He's the only one that doesn't give a shit. The rest of them totally agree. But it's, remember, Jeff Bezos, when he came back from space, he just shoved William Shatner to the ground and put on a cowboy hat and said, "Yeehaw."
I mean, that was pretty grim. But like, I think you look at the way in which he's like, sort of like exercising control of the Washington Post. I think that's a guy who cares a lot about what you think about him.
That sucks. I preferred when he was just like the only tech guy who came from a hedge fund background. So it was like he has the spirit of someone who should be like cocaine tastelessly munching through a giant steak at Carbone's in bonus season. And yet here he is trying to like, instead of like grinding his teeth through a whole, like sabering a bottle of Moet by grinding his teeth through the neck, here he is like exercising editorial control over a newspaper to make himself look good. But I want to talk Thiel before we head off, which is of course the article that launched 1,000 responses to the article. I think there are some things in it that are worth going through, but I think it's going to be a bit of an echo of stuff we talked about with the Zuck section and even with the DOGE section, which is what we have to understand is happening now in the leadership of the United States, and therefore the leadership of the empire of which the United States is leader, is a cycling of elites. This thing that we talked about in Britain is the fact that it never happens in Britain being one of Britain's major weaknesses, right? The whole point of the Corbyn project from 2015 to 19 was an attempt to cycle out committed neoliberals from elite leadership of the United Kingdom, and the committed neoliberals, or committed right-wingers, whatever you want to call them, were too good at defending themselves, and the British elite have been too good at keeping itself from cycling for too long.
Yeah. They do get depression from that, though, so like...
And the Thiel article, much like these other things, is an example of what is being cast as kind of a revolutionary moment, but is actually just a change from one set of elites to another. So he calls it a time for truth and reconciliation. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypsis of the ancien regime's secrets.
Shut the fuck up, man. Jesus Christ. Like Thiel has a unique subset of the need to be liked, which is need to feel smart. And like, I get that. I also am a sufferer of this condition, right? And it also makes me say some stupid things and use some words I don't really understand. But like, the thing is, I can't afford to like never worry about anything else for the rest of my life instead of that. Yeah,
so he says the apocalypsis of the ancien regime's secrets. Now, again, I've edited this for brevity in some places, but he says
Dennis Miller. Do you remember the stand-up comedian Dennis Miller? Kind of evocative,
Okay, Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypsis of the ancien regime's secrets. Okay.
And what happened to coffee-flavored coffee?
So, who is the ancien regime? It's the cathedral, of course. The ancien regime is NGOs, reporters, liberal apparatchiks.
As they gain more and more power, this joke becomes less and less funny because I'm doing the liberal, like, correcting the grammar. It's actually you're with an apostrophe RE thing. But like, really, like, no luck finding that cathedral then. Like, you've been looking around for it for a minute, and not even so much as a nave, not even an apse of this fucking thing has made itself evident to you.
Yeah, not a single flying buttress has appeared.
So, the new administration's revelations need not justify vengeance. Reconstruction can go hand in hand with reconciliation. But for reconciliation to take place, there must first be truth. Now, the truth and reconciliation, as we know, refers to sort of post-apartheid South Africa, was the like nation-building moment that culminated sort of decades of struggle that claimed lives and years and livelihoods. It was really quite like bloody. And Peter Thiel seems to be saying, you couldn't say that ivermectin cured COVID. We need the same process now as a result of that. That from what I can tell, that is what he is saying.
Well, it's like kind of the Caesar equivalent in his mind of like, well, it's our turn, so we need one. Like, you guys, you get a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the times we tried to do like secret biological warfare and like police massacres and stuff. So we need one about the like horse dewormer posts getting deboosted.
Yeah, that's right. We can become the rainbow posting nation finally.
Yeah. No, we're trying to stop that. That's the kind of thing we're trying to stop.
By analogy, you would get a kind of Invictus movie where it's a team of like chud and lib posters coming together to show like the true American spirit. And they get a big thumbs up from Trump, who like inspires them.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd die side by side with a shit lip.
I can't remember which of Diamond and Silk died, but whichever one died gets replaced by Randy Rainbow, and that's the new thing. The apocalypsis is the most powerful apocalypsis, meaning unveiling, is the most peaceful means of resolving the old guard's war on the internet, a war the internet won. My friend and colleague Eric Weinstein calls the pre-internet custodians of secrets the distributed idea suppression complex. The media organizations, bureaucracies, universities, and government-funded NGOs that traditionally delimited public conversation.
No. It's not a cathedral. It's a disc. Okay, yeah. It's like that's different.
But ultimately, I think like what this is about, very roundabout, is it's about knowledge production. What can be sort of knowable in public, what can be quote unquote debatable in public, as worthless as public debate might be. But even when we had Abby on ages ago, she referred to this as defining what are the intellectual lacunas. What are the things that we just can't look at?
Yeah, I'll go further than that, or a couple of goose steps further on from that, and I think we're approaching a kind of like epistemicide, right? Of like these are kind of like no longer permissible ways of knowing things, right? Or forms of knowledge. Like there's a reason why I think all of these guys get really het up about the phrase lived experience, for instance, right? Like they don't like a kind of subjectivity that, you know, requires them to, you know, see trans people, for instance, right? And what we want instead is we want to like truthfully reconciliate our way back to a kind of like objectivity that Peter Thiel and his friends get to decide.
Oh, exactly, right. It's that, because who are they really talking about the media organizations, bureaucracies, universities, and government-funded NGOs, et cetera, right? The examples they give are about the COVID, Thiel gives are about the COVID lab leak hypothesis, fucking ivermectin, the JFK assassination, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like all of these guys, when they indulge their more kind of aristocratic fantasies, and sometimes they involve AI in this, sometimes not. It's like, we're going to be like, you know, the top like 1, 5, 10%, whatever of like, it's implied like white cis male guys are going to be like, we're going to be the ones who think. Everybody else is going to be using like grok or whatever the fuck else. And, you know, our, you know, superior rationality will enable us to, you know, kind of like have like kind of like aristocratic dominion over everybody else. One problem with this is that everything that they believe is wrong and stupid. Like it just isn't true. Like, and I think the ivermectin shit is a great example of this. To be like, well, obviously I should have a kind of superior societal position because of my, you know, my knowledge and my reason. And you go, okay, well, what does that reason lead you to do? And the answer is take like equine medications.
People say that I'm full of shit, and yet I shat out my entire intestines when I took ivermectin. So I'm actually one of the least full of shit people you'll ever meet.
Also, right, like this is, you want to say like the distributed idea suppression complex, as Weinstein calls it. Number one, it's like, yeah, a lot of liberal organizations have not earned a great deal of trust from people, right? That's fine. But also we know what he's actually talking about again is like, oh yeah, you're not allowed to like misgender people. That's because a bunch of, you know, universities, media organizations, NGOs, and bureaucracies have decided you can't do it. That's like what's sitting beneath this as well. And also, you know, but we know what kinds of ideas are suppressed by these people, which like people like Peter Thiel are perfectly happy to be suppressed. For example, what definitely does need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission are the information that got suppressed by the like UK and US defense establishment in the early 2000s that got us into fucking Iraq and Afghanistan.
Or I mean, if you want to talk about like distributed like campus totalitarianism, right? It's not making you like not misgender people. It's having the like universities police kick the shit out of you because you have like a Palestinian flag in encampment.
Yeah. Elon Musk Musk going deeper on his like sort of like Teaboo Wikipedia binge and asking if Dr. David Kelly was vaxxed.
Yeah. Even in the UK, right? Like, we know that there was a whole report commissioned by the Home Office on how to combat drug crime that Theresa May sat on because it supported legalization, right? We know that actually, if this any true, look, everyone listening to this, all of us, Mike, Milo, November, me, whatever, we all know that this was never an actual anti-elite movement. It cast itself as one because a lot of people think of managers rather than owners as elites, and they cast themselves as anti-manager because they wanted to be completely unfettered, even by like restrictions that were supposed to make them more money in the long term as a class. Fine, right?
Landlord being like my woke letting agent.
Yeah, essentially, yes. We know that like any actual anti-elite movement would probably deal with things like Iraq, for example. Or as you say, like if you're worried about campus speech, it's like, no, it's not about like universities deciding to have vegan Mondays or like having a pronoun policy in the student union. It's, oh yeah, if you express any amount of Palestinian solidarity, then fucking Canary Mission sends around like a panel van with your name on it saying that you're an anti-Semite, you know.
But you do get a free panel van, so, you know, it's kind of 50-50.
You know, so it says, he said, we cannot wait 6 decades to end the lockdown on a free discussion about COVID-19. And he goes into a bunch of like, Anthony Fauci, you are excommunicato, like a John Wick villain. Saying, our First Amendment frames the rules of engagement for domestic fights over free speech, but the global reach of the internet tempts its adversaries into a global war. Can we believe that a Brazilian judge banned X without American backing in a tragicomic perversion of the Monroe Doctrine?
A tragicomic perversion of the Monroe Doctrine. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, the question there is, does Brazil have sovereignty?
Yeah.
To which the answer to your wants is no,
Yeah,
of course
obviously
not,
they don't.
right? Like, it's not what the Monroe Doctrine is about. The Monroe Doctrine is about foreign policy, you fucking moron. He doesn't know anything, and he doesn't have any curiosity to find out either. And like I say, like, yeah, like I fucking do that too, but like I also don't have billions of dollars.
Yeah. So our ancien regime, like the aristocracy of pre-revolutionary France, thought the party would never end. 2016 shook their historicist faith in the arc of the moral universe, but by 2020 they hoped to write off Trump as an aberration. And it's like, okay, yes, fine, that is actually true. They could have.
It's also really funny to be like the arc of the moral universe is a kind of like slam on Obama, but calling him the Ancien regime in the arc of the moral universe is one of the most Robespierrean things ever said.
Like, they could easily have written this off as an aberration if they confronted the weakness of their own offer to people. It's the same as the Labor Party. They're not back to normal because they're defending a set of institutions people hate, right? It's the same thing in the US. People don't like these institutions. They don't want to defend democracy without doing anything for them. It's fair enough. But that's not the idea that that's because of some hidden egalitarian agenda that a hive mind of like do-gooders are sort of trying to foist on like America or Britain or wherever through like supporting Alexandra de Moraes' own Elon Musk or like giving the HHS SWAT team gender seems entirely ludicrous.
It's so funny how like Labour and the Democrats have got themselves into this situation where they're basically like calling a press conference where they're holding a gun to their own head going, so help me, I'll fucking do it. Meanwhile,
Rachel
Trump
Reeves,
is...
I'm really worried about it.
Trump is winning just by going, Obama.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you have to do.
Mike, I want to know what your reaction was to this piece before we end.
No, I think your reading is correct, especially in the, well, first of all, the idea, you guys really need to, I guess I want to validate your thinking that these people all exist in a group chat together, gassing one another up as they misread ancient texts or things like that, or don't understand the words that they use, because that is literally what they're doing all day. You know, Zuckerberg is very closely communicating with Mark Andreessen all day. Thiel, who's on the board, Thiel left the board, but he's still a close confidant of Zuckerberg's. That was more theater around Thiel's political donations. And so I just like pieces like this to me read as they had this sort of idea in the group chat. Thiel is the most famous of them who can like put this out there in again, like a lot of like a historicist or at least misreadings of history way, using words, misusing words. And like it resonates with a large amount of people who also are sort of on board board with this point of view, or at least Thielism. And I don't know, it's kind of defeating in the sense that it works, and it's some of these guys are trying to sound much smarter than they actually are, not particularly deep thinkers. They're people inside of Facebook who make these grand sort of proclamations on history and just don't read the history books. So
every day of my life, I feel like I'm losing a different chess match to a dog.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think it's suspicious that all of these billionaires are such close friends with Mark Andreessen. But what you've got to remember is that a few years ago, he had a great fall from a wall and they were all summoned to help put him back together again. And they were all, incredibly trauma bonded by that experience.
We have gone long once again, but I do want to say, number one, Mike, always a blast to have you on. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us today.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me. It's lovely. And y'all are one of the funniest podcasts I get to do. So thank you so much.
Well,
Always
thank
a
you.
pleasure.
And also, if you are out there listening and you have $5 cash American, you can get a second episode of this show every week on the Patreon. You know all about how to do that. I also wanted to remind everybody, by the way, remember not to sign up via your iPhone app. It will cost extra and we don't see that money. So sign up via your browser or any other phone app.
Yeah, you are directly funding the next Emperor Augustus in his own mind if you do that.
Yeah.
So
It goes to Tim Apple.
So,
wait, fuck! I mixed up Apple and Meta. Let's take that bit out.
and then, of course, Milo's in like Leiden or whatever, or Hamburg.
I'm doing the fucking most boring towns of Europe tour.
You're doing a tour last seen by like Lutheran ministers in 1532.
Come and find me in Breslau, Leipzig, Salzburg.
He's going to be in Utrecht. He's going to be in Arlborg. He's going to be in Malmo. Milo is going to be coming at you from small towns in Pomerania.
That's right. I'm going to be performing to an audience of tiny little dogs.
He's going to be in Syracuse.
That's right. No, but seriously, Bristol very much on sale for this Sunday, the 19th. Please buy tickets to that. Yeah, London is sold out. Or any of those towns. Brussels and Rotterdam, still a few tickets available to those. Rotterdam will definitely sell out, so get on that. But Brussels, few left.
Yeah, The Hague. How many are left in The Hague?
Yeah, how many are left in The Hague? I don't know. Well, there's a few spots available in The Hague. Me doing a show exclusively for war criminals and everyone commits suicide at the end. That'd be fun. Hey, there's an idea. Yeah, if any brave promoter wants to take that one on. Australia on sale. I think that's, many of those. Check them out. MiloEvers.co.uk.
My It's Political Correctness Gone Mad bit doing like an absolute barnstormer at The Hague.
Yeah. Srebrenica, I hardly know her. Yeah.
Oh, God.
He's going to be in Lake Como, St. Moritz, Biarritz, San Sebastian.
Right. You can find me in Osijek. I actually have got a show there.
Okay. I don't know why I got trapped in just naming sort of European towns.
Slightly manic phase, which will continue for the next hour. I'm just anticipating you just like texting me the names of like whatever town the monastery from the name of the rose was outside of.
Yeah.
Milo's going to be performing.
Dijon, Strasbourg.
Milo will be performing in Mount Athos to an all-male audience of monks.
That's right.
It's political correctness gone mad.
Okay, actually, goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much again, Mike, and we will see you in a few days on the Patreon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hell yeah.